Hi, everybody. Welcome
Hello.
to our live edition on identifying red flags and green flags. Thanks to everybody for joining. We have a few special guests today, and I'm going to start with just a brief introduction, and then we're going to do our regular thing, talking about our prizes and things like that. So I'm going to start it off by introducing the topic, which is identifying red flags and green flags, and also introducing our special guests. So the first one we have is Tammy, and Tammy is a clinical psychologist. We also have Leena. Well, I'll go ahead. Go ahead and let's do all of them, and then we'll let everybody introduce themselves. Right? We have Leena, who is a clinical hypnotherapist, also based in the UK, and then we have Lara Tabet from 𝐾𝐲, also based in the UK. So welcome to all you ladies. I will give each of you an opportunity to introduce yourselves. Lara, since you're up first, we'll go ahead and let you get started.
Sure. So hello, everybody. So my name is Lara Tabet. Professionally, I'm actually a civil engineer. But over and above that, I am also on the board for an NGO called Climb Against Sexual Abuse. And I'm also the lead of the UK chapter for this NGO, which, as its name suggests, effectively fights against sexual abuse. And if you're part of the dancing community, whether kizomba, salsa, or bachata, you probably have seen me around, or at least my Zero Tolerance logo, which was starting a campaign against sexual abuse in the dance community and on our various dance floors around the world a couple of years ago, and still being active to this date. So looking forward to having this discussion with you today. And this is me.
Thank you. Let's go over to Tammy.
Good evening, everyone. I am Tammy Spandiel. I am a clinical psychologist in private practice and in corporate in South Africa. And I have danced my whole life, and therefore this is absolutely amazing that I'm able to be part of this, to bring dance together and my job, and we can talk about things, because I feel it's very important as a clinical psychologist, because there's a lot of things that happen out there in the dance community that are perhaps taboo. So as a clinical psychologist, thank you so much for having me, and yeah, looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. And then we'll go over to Leena.
Hi there. So I'm Leena, and I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. I'm based in London. I'm a psychologist by nature, and my main work is around the mind and body connection and how it all connects in terms of our health and our awareness and helping ourselves. So I'm very much interested in the conversation today and happy to be involved with what we're going to be discussing today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we'll go back to our regular normal setup before we start the discussion. So we want to talk about the winners for the prize for last week. So Ami, are you going to take that over for us?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Hi, Marta. And hello to the lovely guests for this beautiful and very important topic that we have today. And before we move on to the serious stuff, let's just get done with the fun stuff for today. So I'm going to pick out the winners from last time. I'm going to draw them out like I always do. So they are going to be winning beautiful mugs from 𝐵𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻. She's been beautiful. The mugs are like really, really amazing. And thank you, 𝐵𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻, for sponsoring the gift. And the winner from last time is, let's see who is it's a star, Rikita. Rikita, if you're in this live and know that you're a winner for the last time, you received the beautiful Less is More mug, and You've already been a part of us once, so this is going to be this is going to be a beautiful gift for you. And moving on to the question for this week. Paula, can we have that up? And you have the chance to answer it throughout this live and even for a few more days after that. And we'll be picking out the correct answers and having the same lucky draw next time. So it's a very easy one. Where is the music or dance genre coladera from? Everyone, all the beautiful, beautiful kizomba dancers and enthusiasts all over the planet, this is your time to have an answer. And the winner this time gets this beautiful t-shirt from Nice Flamingo. Can we have the picture up of the t-shirt, Paula? This t-shirt. Paula, do we have the picture of the t-shirt? Oh, yeah, there is. Yes, from Nice Flamingo that says, "My sister's keeper." This is this amazing t-shirt. So guys, you have to answer the question for this live to be winning this amazing t-shirt. If you want to win this, write up your answers in the live, in the comments, and engage with us. Let us know that you're here. Give us a shout out and you can win this one. Simple question. I'll be repeating the question once again at the end of the live, and you still will have time to answer them, and I'll pick out the winners next time. Over to you, Martha.
Okay, so I know we did kind of we introduced our guests first, and we didn't introduce ourselves because, we've been doing this for a while now, and hopefully our audience knows who we are. But I'll start with myself. I'm Martha. I'm based in Detroit, Michigan, and I'm happy to participate with all of you every couple of weeks and see how our community is growing. We also have Ami, who was just talking, and she is based in India. We have Danny, who is based in the UK, and we have Paula, who is in South Africa. We are without our fearless leader, Neelam, today. And as you know, she's based in London. So we're going to go ahead and move right along because I think this is a really, it could be a very lengthy topic again, just like our last discussion, which it's really amazing to get so much involvement from everybody around the world. So before we get started, we're going to talk about the disclaimer. We have a disclaimer, and we want to make sure that everybody understands that these are not representative of any third party. But if Bella, we could put the disclaimer up. Everyone that is participating has their own experience and they have their own professional careers. So we just want to make sure everyone understands that the statements, facts, views, and opinions expressed in this live conversation and on the content of this topic are solely of the speakers, commentators, experts, and or hosts. They do not explicitly or necessarily reflect the position of third parties nor the broadcaster. So we just want to make sure that everybody understands that and is comfortable with that, because we just want to make sure that we have good discussion. So everyone on the live knows that this is recorded and it does stay out in social media and on YouTube. And so your comments and your opinions could be shared. But let's go ahead and move forward and start with our discussion. So let's see, who do we have up first? I think we have Tammy up first. Is that correct? Did we have Tammy up first? I can't remember. Let's see. We have Leena up first, actually.
Hi there. I don't mind who goes first. I'm happy.
We have Leena up first, and thank you very much for participating. We really appreciate your input. And let's go ahead and get started with the discussion.
Sure. So I'm going to talk about narcissism and gaslighting, and in the different ways that it can affect you in your life. This can range from partner relationships, parental relationships, work relationships, community relationships, and so on, and within the dance community as well. I'm going to start with talking about gaslighting. So let's talk about what it means and where the term gaslighting comes from. It's basically having your emotions and your reality denied. I'm going to run through some classic statements and things that you might have heard when someone's been gaslighting you. See if you recognize experiencing any of these things. Stop being so sensitive. That never happened. I think you may be mentally ill. You need help. Why can't you take a joke? Why are you always so angry? Why can't you let go of the past? No one is going to love you the way that I do. It doesn't sound like what you said is that difficult. It sounds as if you are exaggerating. I'm sorry you choose to make yourself feel that way. There is nothing that warrants you to feel that way. You have no right to feel that way. Actually, you don't really have that way at all. Let me tell you how you should feel. Other people have it so much harder than you. Stop being a victim. Do any of you recognize, experience any of this? Does it hit home? So exactly what is gaslighting? Let's start with where the term comes from. It originates from a play that was later made into a movie in the 1930s called Gaslighting. In the film, the husband keeps turning the old-fashioned gas lights up and down, and when she asks him, who's been turning the lights up and down, he denies it happening. He tells her he doesn't think that it's any less light or less bright than before. So she starts to begin to doubt her own reality and then slowly loses her grip on reality. And then she goes insane. Simply put, gaslighting is the doubting of another person's reality, whether it's deliberate or not. By saying something and then denying it, by promising something and then denying that promise, over time, the gaslighted feeling, the person feels confused and full of self-doubt. Gaslighting can be manifested in a variety of ways. So let's break them down a little. Let's talk about the classic gaslighting. This involves straight up denial of your reality. That didn't happen. You have no right to feel that way. So most narcissistic relationships had some form of gaslighting going on. It's a given in a toxic or narcissistic relationship that it results in a narcissism or narcissistic person holding all of the power in the relationship because they try and hold on to and control the relationship through holding on to that power. It really leaves you feeling full of self-doubt, second-guessing, confusion. And when you are focusing on all of your energies and trying to get your own reality sorted, the narcissistic can continue to do a great job of continuing to confuse you. Gaslighting is obviously manipulation, emotional abuse, and it sets a tone for the relationship. Not only is your own relationship denied, you start accepting the reality of the other person. So the second kind of gaslighting is called withholding. I'm not going to talk to you if you bring that up again. I'm sure you've heard that being said to you. This involves over time the silencing of you in a relationship, living in fear that you and your needs will not be met. You feel fear, you feel scared. For example, you're scared that you will lose the relationship, and also you get into a pattern of doubting yourself again, wondering that there is something wrong with you for bringing up a topic. Anyone who's ever been from a family of origin where there's been that kind of emotional abuse, where it's been taking place, or any other kind of physical or sexual abuse that's been taking place, you will know this dynamic too well. And for a child to hear that if you bring something up again, you will lose the love, you will lose the support or safety of a significant adult or parent, it can be terrifying. This kind of gaslighting can result into going into adulthood. So you're feeling that you're not allowed to speak your own reality or your own needs. And as you can guess, this can be a perfect setup for getting into and staying with a narcissistic person as an adult. The third kind of gaslighting is contradicting. This involves screwing with your sense of reality by telling you that you did not remember the situation correctly. Actually, your mother was at the party. Or, I met you after I moved out of the house. Or you already said that you didn't want to come to my birthday party when I changed the date. How convenient. Contradicting can leave you wanting to do things like check old emails, text messages and voice messages. You may end up looking at old photographs to confirm whether indeed your mother was at the party or not. You start feeling like a private detective in your own life. The fourth kind of gaslighting is diversion. This involves changing the subject to something that makes the narcissist look good and make you look irresponsible or like a bad person. For example, I remember that time when I had to run to school to get Tommy and he broke his arm while you were too busy to be there for him because you were at work. Or when you bring up their cheating or their infidelity, and then they bring something up from your past that you felt ashamed about. Perhaps you confided in your partner that you once cheated in high school with an ex-boyfriend or a girlfriend, and then they twist that round. So they try to play this guilt card and bring up their own dramas, their own work problems, their own health problems, their issue, their money problems. And the trouble is that you are having, with their family, all of their problems become more of a focus to them. They're trying to get you to pity them, all to distract away from the sad feelings that you are feeling inside. The fifth kind of gaslighting is gaslighting that involves minimalization or a sort of dampening of your feelings. This is one where they tell you are being petty or trying to make you feel like less of a person, while framing it like other people are having it way worse than you. Are you really going to stand there and feel comfortable in your big, beautiful house that I worked so hard for and complain that I was flirting with someone when there are people out there that are homeless? By the time you make sense of all of it, you're like, ugh, what was all that? Gaslighting is all about moving the goalposts, with which the narcissists do very well all the time. They shift your reality and they change the rules mid-game. Or they have one set of rules for themselves and another set of rules for you and other people. When you try to bring up this inconsistency, they will either insult you or label you as petty. In many ways, it can feel really nitpicky. It's almost like the way lawyers argue without putting lawyers down. Hopefully there's no lawyers on this chat. But I mean, jokes aside, who are after? They're after that one thing that's designed to win the argument. It's all about that. It's all about the power. Because for narcissists, it's all about winning. They don't care that it's cruel to you or that it dissolves the intimacy, the closeness in the relationship, as long as they win. Physical gaslighting happens when physical violence creeps into a relationship. This may happen when a narcissistic partner may strongly grab another person's arm or their phone, and when the person who's been grabbed responds and reacts to it, the narcissist will respond and say, "Stop exaggerating. It really didn't hurt. It wasn't that bad. Stop being so sensitive." And often on top of that, you're probably feeling a lot of terror. Two other forms of gaslighting include gaslighting by proxy and gaslighting by tribe. Gaslighting by proxy occurs when someone else does the gaslighting for the narcissist. And since you know how good and how often other people enable narcissists, these enablers become gaslighters for the narcissist as well. Examples of this would be where one parent would make excuses for the other parent's behavior. Your father really didn't mean that. Or other examples in your workplace, making excuses for their toxic manager or defending of a toxic spouse, making an excuse for them. Go ahead, give him another chance. He really is a good guy. Gaslighting by tribe, in essence, is a form of enabling. It's when you're faced down by the network of people around you and around the narcissist, and you turn around and they tell you that what you've experienced did not happen. It wasn't that bad. Her bark is worse than her bite. Are some of these sentences resonating with you? None of that is nice to experience. Gaslighting by tribe happens in families all the time, especially where there is abuse. The victim or victims of abuse in a family or the scapegoats in a family are not heard, and the family will often close ranks and tell them that they are being disloyal for criticizing the mother, the father, the grandfather, whoever the perpetrator is. Or they are told how lucky they are to be in this family. Gaslighting by tribe can also happen to a couple Your friends try to minimize how bad your relationship is. For example, they might say, marriages are hard. All marriages go through rough spots. And most people who gaslight by tribe don't want the inconvenience of your divorce or separation from the family because they don't want to have to choose sides. They don't really care about you. They are doing what works for them. Kids are very susceptible to gaslighting because they are not quite cynical enough to understand anyone can be that manipulative. It's the innocence of a child's mind. Children don't often feel safe questioning a parent, so they often succumb to the skewed reality of the narcissistic parent. Gaslighting bosses can harm your career, your mental health, or you might take the fall for your boss's error, or in the workplace setting, which your boss wants to protect. When a tribe is gaslighting you, you won't feel that you can protect yourself. There is a flip side to gaslighting, in that you may find that you gaslight yourself after being so numb to it for so long. To live in confusion for so long, you may find yourself denying your own emotions. Emotions like, I don't feel anything. This isn't upsetting me. After years of being gaslighted, you start to gaslight yourself. So why do narcissists gaslight? The same reason they do everything is to protect their fragile egos. Other people's realities are a threat to their own. They construct their vision of reality that allows them to maintain their false sense of power. Because the narcissistic narrative is that they are inflexible. They're not willing to integrate other people's perspective, which is why they often come off as pig-headed and stubborn. If you are in pain, and they may be responsible in part for your pain, they sure as hell don't want to deal with that uncomfortable feeling. So they don't. They simply tell you that you are not having that feeling. You are not in pain. And their fragility means that they are threatened by other people's feelings and realities. And so they don't make room for them. They deny them outright. How convenient for them, and how abusive for you. So why do we fall for gaslighting? Why don't we walk away the first time someone gaslights us? Or why don't we just tell them to get lost? There are a few reasons, and it's a lot to do with our vulnerabilities. First, if you grew up being gaslighted, you already doubt your reality. And at the time of gaslighting, it's almost normalized and accepted as a part of a normal relationship. And it's humankind to offer people chances to rationalize their thinking and behavior, believing that they didn't mean it. He couldn't possibly have wanted to hurt me. And for too many people, especially those that are frightened of abandonment, or just don't recognize their own reality, there is the fear of losing the narcissist. If you call them out, or you become concerned about being perceived as arrogant or narcissistic yourself, if you actually said something, it might be turned on you. And most people don't even know that gaslighting is even a thing. It is a classical form of emotional abuse. Once someone gets help at recognizing narcissistic behavior and that gaslighting is going on in their lives, they are able to do something about it and recognize that they do not have to live like that anymore. They don't have to live in hurt. They don't have to live in confusion. It's emotional abuse. Once you begin this, and you begin to recognize this is the red neon flag. That it is. And you can walk away. Well, that's not always an option. It sounds easier than said. But it is important to recognize it and build your internal resilience, strengthening yourself from the inside and protecting yourself from it. To stop responding to it, to defend yourself, to not give it energy that the narcissistic is craving. Do not give up on your internal reality. You are important. Your beliefs are important. Learn to love and nurture yourself. Do not stay vulnerable. Narcissists are masters at gaslighting, and they don't give a toss about what you think or feel or about your reality. Don't give your reality over to a narcissist. They don't deserve your attention or time. Your reality is sacred, and so are you. please feel free to contact me personally if you want more guidance about how this is affecting you personally in your own life. Thank you.
Thank you, Leena. Those are all that's a lot of information for all of us to take in. And I wonder, are there any tips that you can give any person that is experiencing any of these situations, like how to be more confident in either saying something or walking away? And also, I see Ami has her hand up. She has a question.
Yeah, I mean, this is I was very moved by whatever you've said, Leena. I mean, that's a lot of very, very good information. And like you said, there were many statements that would resonate with us. I just had like one question that it's probably more relevant towards the dance community. When I've heard this many times, when there is somebody who has reported emotional abuse or narcissistic behavior and gaslighting or something, these kind of negative toxic behaviors in the community towards the organizers, one of the common responses that the organizer has is, oh, it's a misunderstanding. It's or you've been it's their personal it's your personal problem, and it does not constitute as abuse, or it does not constitute as, I mean, like you said, that people minimize the problem that you faced, and does that count as gaslighting by
Absolutely.
the enablers? That point
it does, absolutely. I mean, it's hard enough going through gaslighting, but when you have people around you that are enabling that, they're a part of the gaslighting. If you're enabling abusive behavior, you are being abusive as such. That doesn't, you have to take it seriously. But it's whether they recognize that they're doing it. That's a difficult.
Yeah, that's what I don't think they're even recognizing that, I don't think even the victim who has gone and reported the abuse whatsoever, and the response that she has received from an organizer, she doesn't even count it as gaslighting. He or she would probably count it as, oh, their opinion. That's their opinion, and I cannot change that. So they wouldn't even consider this as something which could be a gaslighting or a red flag, even for an organizer who refuses to take a step. Thank you. That was a good answer. Yes, Tammy.
Can I perhaps add to that, just from my experience and talking to ladies who have reported these situations, is that I often find that the perpetrators, if I may call them that, are very prominent figures within the dance community. And I think later on I will touch on that. But I think that's to keep at the back of our minds, is that we often miss it because there are such prominent figures, so we automatically trust.
But also, if I may just build on this, Tammy, actually, I think that when particularly in the dance scene and some of these prominent figures that you mentioned, what often comes with them being liked, is this additional charisma, more than usual charisma. They're more than usual being able to basically manipulate the environment around them. And on one hand, this is why they can be so attractive to listen to follow. You feel motivated. So it's part of a leadership quality. But there are studies that show that actually the percentage of psychopathy even in leadership is 4 times what it is in the rest of the population. So you can see how often leadership, which is effectively in the dance community, our artists and our teachers, can sometimes be mistaken, mistakenly mixed up with this narcissistic and sometimes even psychopathic behavior. So this is why we need to be careful as to what we see in our leaders, and actually, instead, we need to recognize their empathy and their competence rather than their confidence and their charisma and all of these things that are not necessarily what we actually learn from them.
Yeah, we have some comments coming in. So we have a question. If Bella, you could put up the question. I think it's a very valid point, especially coming from men. What if they are calling you names such as big baby, etc., when you bring up an issue? So I think that's a really important thing to address. If any of you want to take that on, maybe Leena, you could start.
It's abusive behaviour, so it's a form of abuse. Abuse isn't just, I know the other speakers are going to talk about abuse a bit more, but abuse isn't just physical abuse, it's emotional abuse. It's using words against you to harm you, to belittle you, to make you feel small. And it's a form of control as well. It's all very harmful.
Just touching on that, how can people recognize that within themselves? I think that that's an important question, right? So if you're used to responding and reacting like that to someone by using those kinds of words, and I know that sometimes tone has a lot to do with it, but sometimes it doesn't matter how nicely you say something, it still comes off the wrong way. And so how can people be better at recognizing those traits within themselves and being able to respond or react to someone in a better way and using a better method? Can you guys touch on that?
Well, I think a big part of it is understanding and having respect for others. Just because something's acceptable for yourself in terms of the language that you use, or if you use harmful words and swear words, that doesn't mean it's acceptable to do that to someone else. And the narcissistic behavior does a lot of that. It's about not caring about other one's feelings. It's them just having the control over you and saying what they feel. It's recognizing it for what it is. But respect is a big part of this. It's so important to respect people around you, especially, on the dance scene. I would have thought you've got a community of people. You want to keep people close. You want to make them feel protected.
I think I just want to add in on that. I completely agree. I also want to say I think it's about as well, like, respecting yourself a bit more, and respecting yourself and believing in what you have, believing what you think. So I've had it before as well myself, where a lot of people have told me, oh, this didn't happen and it's your fault and all this sort of stuff. But then I have to take a step back and think, actually, no, I know what happened there. I don't need the justification. And I don't think others should try not reach out for that justification from somebody else, because you're giving them that control. You're then giving them that power. If you believe in what you've said and what you've done, that's what's happened. It doesn't matter if somebody else says you didn't. Does that make sense? So just respect yourself as well. Sorry, yes, Tammy?
So I'd just like to add on to what you said, Danny, is that it is often more useful not to engage with the narcissist, because you are giving them the attention that they really want and require, and boosts their self-esteem. So sometimes to diffuse this situation, it's best to deal with it externally and not to sort of confront the person, and not to engage with that. And that's very difficult, because then we find often that a lot of people tend to sit and internalize those feelings, and they sit with it on their own and they start believing it. So it's very important, firstly, not to engage with it, but also then to acknowledge that even though you didn't engage physically with it at that point, that it is still important, and that you do need to resolve those internal feelings.
Lara, go ahead.
I just wanted to build on that, but also to go back to your question, Marta, and how can you almost identify that you are doing it, particularly if you're the one basically doing the gaslighting, and also which takes us back to what Leena was saying about the answering the questions about the organizers, that they may not realize that they're doing something like this. And I think one thing that I have done myself in effectively respecting others and learning that people have different boundaries is that I feel that you could potentially claim ignorance the first time something is said to you, but not the second and not the third anymore. So if somebody is telling you that that's something that you thought was a joke, or you thought was an opinion, or you thought was not racist, or you thought was not sexist, whatever it is really, actually offended them, and actually it is being interpreted differently and actually received differently in an emotional way by the other person, they really only need to tell you this once. But in the dancing community, we see the same people around and around and around. So these very often, these conversations are getting overlooked not once, but twice, 3 times, 4 times. So as an organizer, for example, to take the same example that was raised, but we can take any example really. If somebody is raising something to you that you feel, oh, come on, keep it in mind. Keep it in mind and try not to come on anyway. Try to acknowledge what has just been said. And then if it's said to you a second time, which is often is, that means that really it is an issue. And your opinion as to whether it is an issue doesn't necessarily matter anymore. Because you cannot negate and dismiss what other people are raising as being offensive and abusive to you, particularly as an organizer when you have the duty of care towards your attendees, but more generally anyway.
Yeah, that's a big part of making your event and your dance scene, your community, a safer and more welcoming and inclusive place. So, yeah. Does anybody else? Okay, Ami, go ahead.
Yeah, and I would like to question Tammy on what she said earlier, that it was a very healthy thing to say, that do not engage with the narcissist. And but what about the enablers? Do you have any suggestion that when you recognized, say after this talk or something, that there is a red flag, that you have been gaslit by an organizer or an enabler, let's just say enabler, how do you engage, or do you not, or do you call it out, or does it help? Because you are already in a position of reporting an abuse, or in a position where you've been victimized by a narcissist already, and then gaslit by someone else. So, yeah, go ahead.
So I think that's very important, and I've experienced it many times in the dance community, where people have spoken out and organizers said, it's not something that happens very often. I was told personally that, you're just overreacting, but I am all about, when it comes to abuse, we cannot be quiet. Yes, we don't engage with them at the time and the perpetrator, for lack of a better word, but for me, and what I've done personally myself in the dance community, is then make it public, because I've noticed even in South Africa, going to report it to the police, that does nothing. And many women have actually spoken out. So some people take it to a public platform, and that's what I encourage people to do, is to take it onto public platforms. It makes you vulnerable, yes it does, but you'll often see that there are a lot of people that will come and support you, and so and some may do it very quietly, and some may take a more aggressive approach. I suppose what you need to be cognizant of is that you might not get the support that you want, and you might come to the realization that people that you are actually close to are the enablers, and that is what I've picked up. So, and that's why a lot of women or men as well don't feel comfortable enough to take it to a public platform, because they are scared that they are going to experience secondary trauma, which is highly likely. However, if we don't speak about it, who is going to speak about it? And I think that's where my passion lies, is somebody has to do something about it. And the more public we are, the more aggressive we are in our approach, the more difference we can make. And I mean, just from some experience, personal experience that I have seen in just Johannesburg, is as soon as one person speaks up, another person speaks up as well. And we've actually at the moment got a group of people that are standing together, and we're saying enough is enough. And we won't tolerate these people at our socials. And some organizers have actually stood up and said, well, you guys, you are no longer welcome at our social events. So it's just being bold and putting yourself out there.
Yeah, at some point, someone has to take a stand. And if you don't feel comfortable yourself in sharing that information, then you need to find somebody that you can confide in within your community in order to make sure that there is awareness about the issues. So one of our viewers, Cassandra, had talked about how she had been invited to get free dance lessons, and in the end, she was groped. So, that's one of the things that's really important, is you need to be able to go to someone, a leader in your community or someone that you trust in your community, whether it's dance or not, to make sure that that's addressed and to get some help in, number one, bringing attention to that person that that's not right and that you are going to share that information with others. So I think this is a great segue to move on to Lara, who's going to be talking for us next.
Sorry, let me just unmute myself. Right. Okay. So I think so. I guess as a first point on this is that Leena talked to us a lot about gaslighting, and gaslighting being actually part of coercive control. I think you've already heard quite a lot about the red flags that would be included in a coercive or manipulative behaviors. So to introduce my topic really, or to introduce my discussion, and also I'm not going to repeat anything that Leena said, so that we can make more time for the discussion. But I just want to start by reminding everybody of a key aspect that can make it easier for you to identify red flags and to identify boundaries. And this is effectively consent. So this is a word that is incredibly important to me, because to me, if somebody fully understands what consent means, they will be able to identify abusive behavior more easily. And if everybody knows what consent means, they'll be able to respect other people's boundaries much more easily without going into the I didn't realize, I thought, I meant, because if you seek consent, you will never be in this situation. And one of the ways that I like to define consent, which you can find in many places on the internet, is by using the acronym FRIES, like the fries that you eat with your hamburgers. And it's an easy way to remember, but this is an acronym that stands for the fact that consent is, first of all, freely given, which means that you decide and you choose to give your consent, which is not compatible with coercive behavior. Second of all, it is reversible. So that's the R in FRIES. Reversible means that you can have given your consent and then at some point decide to take it back. If you are then being convinced that you can't do that, you can't reverse consent because you've already given it, this is also manipulation because you are allowed to reverse your consent. Thirdly, the I in FRIES stands for informed. That means that once you have given your consent to somebody, it was on the basis of information. If you're unable to get this information because you're passed out, obviously you haven't given any consent. But also if you've been given false information, that also means that you haven't actually given your consent. So if somebody is lying to you, giving you false information to get you to do something, and then after that, based on that you have given your consent, you have actually been abused, and it's okay to feel cheated, to feel betrayed, and to feel abused because you haven't actually given your consent. The E in fries is enthusiastic, and that means that you're as excited as the other person to be in a relationship, to be in a dance, to be within a sexual intercourse, or whatever it is that you're doing. And this enthusiasm really is not something that people can pretend that they can't see. I think it can be quite obvious actually. And finally, the fifth letter, which is S in the FRIES acronym, is specific. And that means that when you consent to something, you consent to this one thing. You have not consented to, everything else in the world, in simple terms. So in that way, if all of these five adjectives are equally as important. But I think today, because we're talking about coercion, and because we are talking about manipulation and the red flags around this, I think it is key to effectively focus on, or remember mostly, the F and the I. So freely given and informed. So remember that it is always for you to decide to give your consent, and not to be pressured to do so, not to be threatened to do so, not to be bargained into doing so, not to be dared into doing so, because all of these things are effectively a way of exerting coercive control and manipulation on you. Now, there are a few flags that I want to go through quite quickly, because I'd like to go to the actual conversation and discussion to talk about real examples that some people may have raised, because I know that Cassandra has already raised one. But key flags for coercive control are, first of all, if somebody is isolating you from your friends, from your family, from the people who you came with to the event, isolating you from what you consider to be your support system, from what you consider to be your friends and the people that you have chosen to be your positive, maybe influence, but basically the people that you have chosen around you. So whether it is short-term or long-term, if somebody is forcibly isolating you from these people, this can constitute coercive control. Secondly, if somebody is monitoring your activity, monitoring your behavior, commenting on every single move, commenting on every single action, reaction, behavior, lack of behavior, this is also quite a controlling and coercive attitude as well. Thirdly, if somebody is not allowing you to be autonomous, not allowing you to be free, not allowing you to decide for yourself what you want to do next, what you want to do tomorrow, how do you want to react to something, whether you want to accept something, not allowing you to autonomously decide on what is okay and not okay for you, this is coercive control. Gaslighting, as we said already, is part of coercive control, so I'm not going to go through the 15 minutes of great red flags that Leena has gone through. So hopefully these are understood to be part of coercive control. The next one is name calling. So we already talked about it actually in one example for the gaslighting, but name calling, diminishing you, even if sometimes it's seen to be a pet name, oh, I'm just being nice to you, if you don't feel that they're being nice to you, it's not because they say so that it is the case. Sometimes name calling can be minimizing. Sometimes name calling can be diminishing, can be putting you to the side, can be ignoring what you are saying and ignoring your reality. And this is coercive control. Threatening you. So, oh, well, if you don't do this, if we don't have this dance, you may never have another one before. It's very funny, but sometimes it's not. Threatening is also coercive control. Bargaining is coercive control. If you do this, whatever with me, I'll give you a free lesson. If you do, no, please do this video because so-and-so, and I'll give you so on. If you're uncomfortable with the bargaining, this is actually coercive control. It's not bargaining. It's not innocent bargaining, let's call it. Making jealous accusations or really accusations based on your past experiences, setting expectations as to because you have done something in the past with another context with another person, therefore now you shall do this, 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 and this because this is the same thing and it's equivalent. All of these argumentation, all of these comparative ways are actually coercive control. So these are just really general examples and general red flags. And obviously the opposite of these will be green flags. But I wanted also to add a few examples very specific to the dance community. And for those of you who are asking about fries, it's actually on the 𝐷𝐄𝐃 Facebook page in the FAQ for consent. You will find it defined as that as well. So you can find it there. But yes, to go back to some examples very specific to the dance scene. If somebody drags you onto the dance floor rather than asking you to dance, that's a red flag. Asking you to dance, giving you the choice, accepting that you may be resting or having some water, accepting your no, understanding whether you'd be keen for a dance later on instead, not badly reacting to your no. These are all green flags. Boundaries. So we've had these conversations quite a few times on the dance community about tricks and dips and things that you may not be prepared to do with someone who you've never danced with before. Not getting your consent or your comfort level for these things is actually a red flag. I'm not saying all of these are horrible, abusive behaviors that people should go to jail for. I'm saying these are red flags that you are allowed to raise, you're allowed to see, and you're allowed to comment on. Somebody redoing something despite the fact that you said no. Personally, not that you need to know this, but personally, I really don't like movements that involve my neck when I'm dancing. I don't like to do this stuff. It's just personally, it bothers me. Is this by definition abuse to try to control somebody's neck? No, it's not, but to me, it's uncomfortable. So when somebody tries to do it once, I just say, sorry, I really dislike neck movements. And that's it. It can stop there and it is no problem at all. But if after that they keep on doing this has nothing to do with the movement anymore. This has specifically to do with making you do something that you don't want to do. This has specifically to do with control. It has no longer to do with the specific move that can be nice or not nice for them. Because you have articulated that it is not nice for you and it is not acceptable to you, for whatever reason it may be. So another one that I mentioned before is daring, and I know that this gets mentioned or happens often on the dancing, but it's basically, it's largely bullying, but it's also coercive behavior, because bullying is coercive behavior, and it's basically bullying you or daring you into doing something that you do not want to do. Into asking someone that you do not want to ask to dance, or so on. So, I think these are just a few examples that I can give or that have come to mind while I was preparing for this talk. But there will be many, many more of these, and I'm sure that you'll be raising some in your questions. So maybe at this point in time, it's best to move on to questions and see what the audience has to add to all of this.
Yeah, or does anybody on the panel have any questions or comments to kind of back up what Lara has said, or to provide a different perspective? I think we have a comment from Karen, actually, from Karen Neslow. Thanks, Karen, for joining. She has been a participant in Lessons More and is in Florida in the dance community there. Okay, so Karen says, thank you, Tammy and ladies, for validating my experience. Stemming from the dance community leaders' comments and reactions to me coming forward, I experienced secondary trauma lasting for 2 years. So it's definitely something that all of us have had an experience with, right?
Leena was raising her hand. She had
I just wanted to say that was really interesting, Lara, and especially the point of having boundaries. and how important it is to have boundaries to prevent forms of abuse, whether it's emotional or being made to do things that you don't want to do. So the boundaries, I think, is a really important thing to develop. If someone doesn't have enough of a boundary, that's something they can develop within themselves and start to think about what kind of boundaries that they want.
And to feel validated, I think I would encourage everybody on this live to really feel validated, to have and express your boundaries. This is not, I mean, I've been told before, oh, you're ruining the fun. Well, okay, tough. But actually, I'm not ruining the fun. I'm often a very fun person, but some things I just don't find fun. And, that's okay. And comments such as these saying, oh, you're ruining the fun, oh, you're not a fun person, and so on. These are part of coercive behavior, actually, because they're trying to convince you that you are not validated in what you don't find fun. And, that's not okay. So if this is what you hear, move on and find people who find you fun, because I'm sure that there are plenty of these.
Yeah, especially the one that you said about the leading with the neck thing. People can give you pretty a lot of slack for that. That they actually get offended that you said that you don't like a particular movement. So I don't think people should be taking any offense in any time that you set your boundaries. It's not okay, but
it's not personal. It's not personal. Setting your boundary is yours. It has nothing to do with them personally, And if somebody is taking it personally, it's because they actually have a problem to resolve within themselves. It is not, it is not you who has the problem.
Yeah. There's something that's really important. I mean, when you state that boundary up front. So for example, there's been a few dancers where, they do a lot of dips or a lot of body rolls and neck rolls. And I have started being very vocal and saying, hey, please don't dip me, or I have a bad shoulder or whatever. And I've encouraged our students and other people in the community that have had issues to please do that, because number one, you have to think about yourself first. You have to take care of yourself first, and setting those boundaries is really important. We have a couple comments coming in now, which is great. So let's take a couple of those. Lindsay, thank you for joining us here from Michigan. A tough thing I've run into before with dancing is nonverbal communication of consent. Yes. For example, if someone tries to lead a sensual move and I'm not comfortable with it, but don't explicitly say that and just resist or don't follow it instead, I've experienced leads who will assume I need them to teach me the move or will just keep trying anyway. Yes, of course, verbal consent is easiest, but a lot of people who don't feel comfortable verbalizing boundaries in the moment. This is so true. I'm sure all of us can relate to this. You can get this outside of dance too. I mean, if you're at a bar and you're feeling a lot of peer pressure to do shots and whatever, it doesn't have anything to do with boundaries or driving faster or anything. I mean, I'm sure we could come up with a million examples, but yeah, that is very important. And
it's actually quite difficult.
Another subject on teaching on the dance floor, right?
Yeah, let's not get into this one now, but it's actually quite difficult because, in some other contexts, it's much easier to sort of say something, whereas in the dance, you feel that, it's only 3 minutes. I don't really want to interrupt this by a speech as to why I don't like this specific move. So it's quite difficult to find a balance between actually, doing it in a non-verbal way, but still doing it. So still communicating your consent. And I think it can be quite difficult, but once again, I think it stems from people, nowadays not being fully receptive to seeking consent and to looking for consent continuously and constantly. Because if you are, then you will feel that. And if you think that you need to teach someone this move, you will then ask, are you okay? And this is a question that I think really is not asked enough in our dance community. Whether it is between two people dancing, whether it is if somebody is looking particularly uncomfortable, somebody from outside of the dance, somebody sitting at the side or a bystander coming in and asking, are you okay? Whether it is at the end of the dance, somebody sitting by themselves and looking traumatized or sad, or maybe just drunk really, you can still ask, are you okay? And actually this is a green flag. Somebody who is who is coming to you and asking you whether you are okay, whether it is during the dance, after the dance, whenever it is. And in your life, really, people who are asking you, are you okay, to actually hear the answer. I think that's quite an important green flag that we minimize often, that we don't see.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I know that in the past, like maybe several years ago, I was uncomfortable in asking. If I saw something, I felt like I was uncomfortable in going and asking if that person was okay or if they needed help in a variety of different situations. You know, if you see someone walking who seems distressed, or somebody that's had way too much to drink at a bar or outside, and also if you see that they're experiencing a bad dance. You know, you see that
you see the body movement.
Yeah, it's not exactly in the body movement. So it's really important to step outside of your comfort zone sometimes and go ahead and participate in asking the question, are you okay? Do you need help? Can I get you anything? You know, anything like that. Does anybody else have any comments? Because we do have some comments coming in from the audience. Go ahead, Tammy.
Just something practical which I always find helpful is I either move my body away, or sometimes I actually literally take their hand and just move it into a more comfortable position. I don't like brushes and things over my neck either, and I will just calmly take their hand and move it away. And a lot of people from there, you will see that if it's a red flag or a green flag. But I think it's important to respect our bodies enough and ourselves enough to say that it's not okay in the moment, and we can't verbalize it, but I think we need to think about strategic ways in doing it non-verbally, and you can be quite creative in finding ways depending on who you're dancing with. So for me, I found I don't dance with anybody who I have not observed for a bit. And I think that's quite important, so that you know when you can say something or when you perhaps have to just keep away and not engage at all. But if you are in that interaction, I often find I move my body away, or I physically move them away in a gentle manner in order to not create a fuss, but then it also gives me a clear indication of, can I trust this person, and is it a green flag or is it definitely a red flag?
Go ahead, Paula.
I just wanted to add a little bit of what Tammy was saying about that you watch before and then you somehow see with who you choose to dance. It happened also to me, and also, but it was very curious that after I realized it also about my own observation, I had to sometimes even accompany ladies that were coming for a social the first time. And I found myself in a position that I was kind of briefing them about all what we are talking about, like look at these signals. If you don't feel comfortable, just let me know. I was feeling somehow like more than a teacher beyond that. And sometimes I got to a point that I was not able to, I was not really myself in peace to that if they go alone. So sometimes I was even accompanying them even if I was busy or tired or whatever, just because sometimes situations come to a point that you need to brief them and help them to somehow go through beyond the dancing learning. Also to learn about those signals, red flags, what to do if you don't feel comfortable, but you are a shy person. I used to be very, very, very shy when I was a teenager, and only with time and experiences, it's like somehow you become stronger and stronger, and you also set up your own boundaries. And now you know you are more sure about what is definitely non-negotiable, but somehow you start to feel that you wish that the others wouldn't have to go through that same, you know?
Yeah. Thank you for that. Oh, go ahead, Ami and Lara. We'll go Ami and then Lara, and then we're going to move on.
I think Ami is pointing at me.
Lara first.
No, I just wanted, yeah, that's a really quick one, but I think it's really important what Paula said, because, and I think all of us, but particularly us women who would have lived very specific incidents, particularly the one that I'm going to talk about now, is to be more open about what our boundaries are, because the more we talk about the fact that we have boundaries, the more others will realize that they're okay to have their own boundaries. And one actually that I was quite interested to hear about was I was once at a festival, and I was talking to a woman who was this was her first festival, so she was there for the first time. She was so excited to do a lot of the workshops, but also trying to do as much of the social as possible. And it was one of these festivals where you had many dance styles, and Kizomba was not a dance style that she had tried before. So she was having Kizomba workshop for the first time in her life at the festival, and having Kizomba socials in the first time in her life at the same festival. And she comes to me and says, I have a question, if you don't mind, since we've been talking and opening up. But yesterday a guy had an erection during our dance, and he was really putting it up onto me. Is this like, I didn't want to stop the dance because I didn't know whether this was usual and normal, but so now that you're here, can I please ask you? And this is just to say that obviously I would, but this is just to say that boundaries sometimes can seem quite obvious for some, but are not necessarily obvious to others. Particularly when they just literally they have not been in the scene that long to effectively feel that they can interrupt the dance in the middle. They can just leave somebody on the dance floor and bugger off because they're not comfortable, and that it's okay to do this. So I think I just want to encourage everybody listening to just be more open with these discussions, to not feel that if you have boundaries, you're a mean person and you should hide this. And just to be more open about this, because I think it means that it will encourage others to set their own boundaries, but also understand that yes, there are boundaries, and not everything that happens on the dance floor is okay because it happens.
Right. Ami?
No, I was just pointing at Lara, and I wanted to go back at one of the green flags that Lara had also mentioned, that we don't ask this question enough in the dance community, that are you okay? Even a simple concern that are you okay? It doesn't have to be a guy asking or a girl asking or anybody. So from there, I wanted to continue. There was this DJ friend of mine in India, and he made such a beautiful point about this. So when you see somebody engaged in a very squirmy dance, you see the face getting contorted, and the girl is really not in a condition to do anything, or like Lara said, that they're not very well aware of their boundaries as such. Even as simple that, hey, what's up? Just saying hi in the middle of the dance makes the guy back off. And I've noticed it is very effective, because at least letting them know that somebody's watching. Mm-hmm. That's all, even, so he said that, I do that to my friends. He's like, I do that to my friends. When I see some of my friends among the women who are dancing and they're getting just uncomfortable with the dance, I just say that from the sidelines, I can just say that, hey there, how's it going? And, just a hi can make volumes of difference and just make that uncomfortable situation or that particular point of abuse stop right there. That's a very good green flag to have, which are a good practice that I felt that any of us could just practice in our regular environment at any time. Yeah, Leena.
Just wanted to say, and if you're in close proximity to someone that you're just learning dance from, you might feel a sense of intimidation. They know more than what I do, so maybe that's normal, but I don't feel comfortable. So I think it's really important to connect to your inner self and use your intuition. If something doesn't feel right to you, no matter what you're doing, if you're in close proximity to someone and it doesn't feel right to you, stand up, say something. It's okay to say something. And also, I think if these leaders of the dancers they know that these are newbies and these are new dancers, it's really important for them to have the conversations with these new students and say, look, anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, that we do, please feel free to speak up. And it's important for me to know how you feel about this. So communication is key.
Yes,
absolutely.
Absolutely, Leena. With that, that's a very good point. And I think with that, I'll pick up on Alejandro's comment here, which, Paula, can you pick that up? Yeah, it is very important for every lead to understand central moves are suggestion, not an obligation. Forcing your way through moves you don't know how to execute yourself as a lead is unacceptable on the dance floor. You can't lead a move if you, as a lead, don't understand the mechanics involved. Yes.
Absolutely. That's a great way to segue into Barrett's comment about a question about how can teachers educate about boundaries in dance without talking too much? And I don't know if that is without talking too much in class or without talking too much about it right now. But I mean, that's something very important. In addition to making sure that you're clear when you're teaching, that you bring things like this up, bring up things such as what Leena said about, hey, if you're a beginning dancer, please tell us if there's something that you're uncomfortable with. And instructors also need to remember that when you're teaching something, that it's important to mention that all of these are suggestions. We can teach you how to execute something, right? We can teach you. However, you need to understand that your follow may not, number one, know, number two, be comfortable, or number three, just not want to do it. So it's really important to remember those things. And this guy has an opinion as well, obviously. So I think it's really important to remember those things. I don't want to rush through anybody's comments. If we don't get, just so you guys know, if we don't get to your comment during the live session, we always go back and try and answer all the questions and comments and address anybody's concerns. And this, there's a comment by Karen. If Paula, you could put it up. She stated that this was a bit of a minefield, but luckily I live in an area with a huge number of dance events. And by supporting events that embrace safety, I was able to carve a fabulous dance space, as well as knowing that if any problem came up in the future, large or small, I'd be amidst promoters that were receptive to listen. So again, going back to being vocal and finding a safe person or a community that you can share your thoughts with. And your experiences with is really important.
But also to vote with your money. Yep. This is something that I always say. If you are unhappy about the way an event is being run, if you feel that an event is particularly, or a venue is particularly unsafe because of the way that it basically filters out the good people somehow, because these places exist, just don't go. Exactly. Tell your friends, friends, talk about it and don't go. And I know that sometimes it's difficult because you think, oh, well, everybody's going, I'm just going to go. And then you end up having a shit time, apologies for the words, because basically you don't feel safe. And maybe actually try to be the one to say, well, actually, do we really want to go? Because I don't really feel safe. And maybe at this point, somebody else in your group will also say, yeah, actually, neither do I. And all of a sudden, nobody wants to go. Or maybe not. I don't know. I mean, this is how it could potentially happen, but maybe have a try.
I just want to go to, I hope it's Barrett's comment. I don't know, Paula, if you can bring it up. He's just put, I think these are super important topics, but I expect somebody would protest in class if the teachers talks too much about other things. I do wonder what other things you mean. If you're talking about, say, what we're talking about now, boundaries, how to put things like this in place, maybe I question what they're there for. If they're not happy, if you've come to a lesson and they're not happy to accept talking about boundaries and learning ways to respect others during the dancing, then sort of why are they there? Why do they want to dance? What are their motives behind dancing?
Yeah,
I think everybody should feel comfortable or should be happy to talk about these things.
Yeah, she put in another comment just now about how we can include some advice in our dance pedagogy and connect it to etiquette and dance maybe. And so that's just part of the teaching style, right? I mean, those are things, not all instructors are going to do that. And I think that if you're taking regular classes, you get to know your instructor and you know what kind of culture they have within their school, at the studio. But when you're going to congresses and festivals or pop-up workshops, weekenders, things like that, it's more difficult to understand that. I can speak for myself. I know that when I'm teaching by myself, I'm always very vocal about, explaining, what your level of comfort is, that you need to understand what your level of comfort is, and showing different, like, for example, for kizomba, closed and more open position, and making sure that we touch on those topics, especially with beginners. If you have new people, if you see that you have new people, even though they may be experienced, it's always important to touch on that too. But that's something that we all need to take upon ourselves as instructors to make sure that we share that information with our audience.
I think coming from a teacher is more important as well. If I ever assist a class and we've got, say, new men in the lesson, I make it probably one of the first things I say to them. I think about how they're holding me and if I feel comfortable or not, how somebody else might feel about that. And I try to explain to them. I try and hold them the same way and explain to them sort of I ask them how it's feeling and sort of say to them, right, so this is actually how the girl's going to be feeling, or the guy. If I'm leading a lady as well, I do the same. I make sure I put my posture how they might lean on a man, etc., so that they can feel how the other one might feel if they're holding them too tight, or just something different, so that they can really experience what it's like.
Yeah, play the reverse game. That's really important. I think that also helps become a better dancer overall. So great conversation. Thanks everybody for your input, and thank you to our audience for the questions. We're going to go ahead and move on to Tammy now, our clinical psychologist. And Tammy, go ahead and enlighten us with your knowledge. We're excited to continue this conversation. You're on mute. Let's unmute you.
Sorry about that. So I'm so glad for the two ladies that have set the foundation for my topic, because I think you lay down the foundation exceptionally well. So I'm not going to go and I'm not going to try and repeat any of those. But I think we've touched on things that can happen in the dance community in the moment, but there are also things that happen afterwards, and that have long-term effects. And those are things like codependency and trauma bonding. And sure, when I was asked to speak about this, I was like, okay, let me get some clarification. And I think that speaks to the difficulties that I see in my private practice at the moment. And from, just keeping in contact with people in the dance community, they're actually starting to speak about these things, about how the trauma that has happened in the dance community is affecting them at the moment. So now that people establish relationships in the dance community, that is inevitable. And some of these turn into friendships and some of these turn into romantic relationships. So I'll be touching on that. So these are difficulties that I'm seeing at my private practice at the moment, because COVID has really forced us to be isolated with certain people. And shame, I've seen a lot of people who have been forced to go into lockdown with their perpetrator. And this has resulted in developing codependency and trauma bonding. So as I was preparing for this presentation, I remembered a quote, and I'm not sure who wrote it, but it states that the comfort of being somewhere familiar can't outweigh the benefit of being somewhere better. I would like you to hear that again. The comfort of being somewhere familiar can't outweigh the benefit of being somewhere better. And I think this really speaks to what we are talking about today, that we become comfortable in situations. And this is such a powerful statement, as it speaks directly to the dynamics of both codependency and trauma bonding. So let's break it up a little bit, because the topics tonight really overlap and sometimes can be very confusing. Our minds are so wonderful and so unique and powerful at the same time that sometimes it takes extreme trauma and it reframes the situation for our psyche to provide some sense of comfort, because our conscious awareness is not able to hold the trauma. So the reality is just too unbearable that it might break us. So our minds reframe it and we think differently about it. And both these conditions make it easy to mistake abuse for love. And that is key. Now, it also sounds really absurd, but it is the truth of the matter. In my mind, codependency and trauma bonding are linked, and I'll approach it from the same point to simplify it. And perhaps if there are specific questions, we can discuss it. And as difficult as it is, it needs to be spoken about. And really, everybody that's on this live stream, it needs to be real, and we need to be real, and we need to discuss our experiences and our thoughts. So let's look at what these two concepts entail. So the trauma bond is similar to Stockholm syndrome, where people held captive come to have feelings for the perpetrator. This is a survival instinct that can occur in any relationship, and I have personally witnessed it in the dance community, where people do come together and they do establish a relationship, and it does become long-term. And then they're stuck in this trauma bond. So the perpetrator is likely to have narcissistic traits, as discussed previously, and codependency issues as well. So they have this need to control, as mentioned previously, and they demand affection, and you need to be there at all times. The victim as well needs to feel loved and cared for, and therefore feels that they cannot escape the relationship. They mistake the abuse for love. They might even be scared that their perpetrator cannot live without them. And I'm just going to the extreme, but there are varying degrees of this type of trauma. With codependency, on the other hand, there's an understanding of why the abuse is occurring. So the victim is aware that this is not a healthy situation. So the abuse is identified. Here, the difficulty is letting go. Because if I understand what I'm doing wrong, then maybe I can bring it back the loving relationship. This is so common in the codependent relationships. And it goes back to the quote in the beginning, that what you know is better. You can't get any better than what you know, because we don't deserve better than what we know. If you are able to get out of the trauma bond, however, or the codependent relationship, it is likely that one or the other reaches out again for love, for recognition and approval, and the vicious cycle just continues. The trauma bond is then strengthened, and the longer the cycle continues, the more destructive it becomes. Both of these types of relationships are directly linked to the narcissistic abuse, which both ladies spoke about. And Leena has discussed this at length, so I'll just briefly touch on the flags. So what are these red flags? I think we have listed a lot of red flags, but to be honest, for me, there's really one. When I have to justify to myself, justify somebody else's bad behavior to myself, and I say that it is acceptable, that is the biggest red flag in terms of codependency and trauma bonding. Secondly, feeling pressured and controlled, as Leena and Laura have discussed. Both codependency and trauma is all about the perpetrator trying to take control over another person to feel better about themselves. So it's their own insecurities that they're dealing with. Another major red flag is charm. That feeling that this person is amazing and too good to be true. And you're probably right, and it isn't true, because by no means are any of us perfect, but we often fall into this trap because dancing is a form of exercise that releases endorphins and it makes us feel good. And that's how these relationships start. Most importantly, and I cannot emphasize this enough, is to go with your gut. That little voice inside you can just save you. So enough with all the negativity. I also want to get to the green flags and things to look out for and to focus on. And some of these have been mentioned as well. So I'm just going to try and see if I can just sift through them. But taking the time to get to know the other person. Never jump into any situation just because it feels good. Respect is earned and so is trust. If the other person takes the time to respect you and to get to know you, that is a green flag. And that's why for me in the dance community, it's so important to sit back and observe before participating. As Laura has mentioned, and I want to reiterate, is consent. We need to be able to establish not just boundaries, but healthy boundaries. And healthy boundaries means respecting each other's boundaries. Relationships are a two-way street, and both parties need to be comfortable with what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, especially on the dance floor. No relationship is easy, but it should not be a task. And when you're going to a social, you're not in class. So somebody shouldn't be wanting to teach you moves. You should be there to go and relax and have a good time. And then one that is very difficult to identify is truthfulness. When somebody has no hidden agenda that make you question the situation. And once you feel like you are questioning yourself, that is one of the biggest red flags. But when somebody makes you feel good as you are, and you are not, you feel comfortable to show the good parts of yourself and the bad parts of yourself, that is a good flag, because somebody's accepting you for who you are and not what you can give them. Because a lot of the times I have found that women have said to me that they don't feel comfortable coming to socials because they feel like an object, like they are just being used so that the man looks amazing. And perpetrators really suss out their victims. So it's very important to feel like you're not an object. And a lot of men do compliment you, and I think, as discussed previously, it is very important to check in with a person. Are you okay? Are you comfortable? That is a major green flag. And then coming back to codependency and trauma bonding specifically is feeling loved when you're being true to yourself. You should not have to pretend to be someone that you are not. And I suppose that those are the red flags and green flags that I have identified. I think we've spoken a lot about the flags, but I just want to leave everybody with, and I'm hoping this can facilitate a discussion, because I think I didn't want to give too much theory, because I think the discussion is important to make it real to where we are. We have to have these real, honest, frank conversations. But I want everybody to know in any community is that you are enough. And in the words of Jenny Layton, she says, you are born being enough. Nothing you can say or do will ever add to or subtract from who you are. And I think often in the dance community, we forget that, because we want to be better. We want to improve ourselves. We want the men to dance with us as women. And often then sometimes we feel like we're not good enough. And I think when somebody does make you feel like you are good enough as you are, that is the green flag, and that is what we need to hold on to. So I haven't directly linked this to the dance community, and I've kept it quite brief because I feel like discussion is more important. And also I think we need to also take into consideration different cultural beliefs in the dance community. So having experienced dancing in different countries, there is different dance etiquette. And I think perhaps that is something we should look at as well. And perhaps we can open that up for discussion as well.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Lots of valuable points. All three of you have really given a lot for people to think about. There's so much information. So we are going to be putting up some resources at the end, and we'll be sharing it on the page. But do we have any questions or comments from the audience that you might want to touch on? I mean, a lot of this, it's really interesting. It's great to have this discussion because our boundaries discussion that we had a couple of weeks ago, a lot of things have been brought up again. So I think that it's really made a difference for a lot of people in being able to relate real life situations to a lot of these topics, right? A lot of the comments that and education that we're getting from all of you. Does anybody on the panel have anything to add or any experience that they would want to share with the audience to kind of put things into perspective? A lot of people sometimes need different perspectives in order to be able to understand what we're talking about.
I just want to add that I think it's very important to notice the red flags and to know when you are uncomfortable, because something small can lead to long-term effects. And I think we often forget that. It's like, oh, it won't happen again. But then people get stuck in these very abusive, traumatic relationships that they cannot get out of. And then they feed into that narrative and they become part of that narrative. And we don't want people to be feeding into that narcissism, that narcissistic abuse that Leena was speaking about.
Tammy, I have this question. Like you said, things about that truthfulness being a green flag. That's very correct. So does that directly translate into lying being a red flag? Because you said that it's you open up to a person, even you show them your good sides and the bad sides based on how comfortable you are with the person, right? So because they have made you feel good about yourself, they've made you feel comfortable with who you are and what you are. But then you open them, but that also exposes you to, I mean, these are I feel also manipulation tactics used by narcissists to prey on you, because they're charmers. They make you feel good about yourself. They want to see your good side and the bad side, and when you've made yourself vulnerable enough, that's when they attack. So how would you? It's an open question to all three panelists. Maybe all of you can elaborate.
And also to add on to that, let's make sure that we're being fair and that this does not just apply to men, that it applies to women as well.
Yes, yeah, of course.
So it's difficult because to answer that, because narcissists and sociopaths, they're all charmers and they're very good at what they do. I mean, they will lure you in and they'll lure in everybody else. But at some point, they are going to slip up. So something as small as them buying you a drink, but you don't see the card that they're paying with, for instance, I've noticed is like a red flag. I've sort of become very hyper vigilant in terms of what are you hiding, So it's looking at really like non-verbal cues. There are a lot of people. So with predators, they want to gain something from you. And it's about trying to identify what is it. Do they want to look good to other people? Do they want to impress you? And I think for men and for women is narcissists and sociopaths, they all feed on vulnerability. And so even highly educated people get trapped into these type of situations. And they have this really good sense of knowing exactly when you're at your weakest, So for instance, I know somebody who she's highly qualified. She's a professional. She's absolutely got all her things in order. And she was in an abusive relationship for 3 years that she could not get out of. And this was related to, it happened in the dance community. And sort of the dance community fed into this abusive relationship. I don't want to give too much away. But she said to me, looking back, she realized that it was because she was in a bad space in her life. And that she feels like that is why she sort of gave in. But she said, if she were in a better space, then perhaps she would have picked up on those red flags. So I think it's very important for us to know that, or for us to be aware of when we are vulnerable and what our emotional resources are at that point in time.
And just to build on that very last thing that you said about emotional resources and about being vulnerable, about being in a bad place, this is exactly why one of the big flags of coercive control is isolating you from all of that support system and all of these things that actually can take you out of your bad place. And this is why it's key, you know, whether it is in your life to have access to your friends and your family, or whether it is in the dance community, where we've been talking a lot about trying to make real friendships within the dance community, about trying to form real ties with people, you know, having deeper conversations, having people that you actually can rely on, and with whom you are really yourself. That can check in with you and also challenge you as to some of the behaviors that you're convincing yourselves are okay that you are doing or that you are accepting. So all of these things, really, they will only make the dance community a friendlier place overall for all of us, ultimately. Sorry, Leena, you were wanting to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. I do a lot of work with trauma victims across all sorts of spectrums. And what I've noticed is that if you've already come from a place where you've had a lot of trauma in your life, especially pre-dance, so things that's gone on in your life when you were younger, the landscape of your brain's already vulnerable. So to recognize in yourself, if you haven't worked through your own traumas, you might be more vulnerable when it comes to other predators. So it's really important to try to get help to work through what you've gone through in the past as well. We can't always control what goes on around us, but we've got to work from within us as well for change.
So thank you to both of you. We have one other comment that came in. One of you, I can't remember which one I think it was Tammy that mentioned that there is cultural differences. And I think that's something really important that we need to just remember when we're traveling and dancing in different places and dancing with people of other cultural backgrounds. We need to remember that it's still okay to have those boundaries. I think it's important for you to familiarize yourself on the differences in culture when you're traveling, and to be cognizant of that, to really understand what the cultural norms are. Unfortunately, we can't get into a big discussion on that because we've actually run out of time, but we want to go ahead and finish out our discussion and any other questions that have come up. Go ahead, Lara.
Yes, I just wanted to touch on the cultural differences, particularly one that comes up a lot, and then I think it's a good opportunity to discuss, which is also the culture of the dance itself. So obviously, you know, this is being organized by Kizomba family, and Kizomba sometimes, you know, it is a cultural dance. So I've had this question put up to me before, saying that, you know, Taraxinia, as it is fundamentally, you know, it's a mating ritual. This is what it symbolizes. So how is it that, you know, people who are not aware of this meaning, supposedly, come and dance Taraxinia with a perfect stranger and are then surprised that they're getting more than that, or that they are getting advances afterwards? And this is where, you know, it can feel a little bit awkward to try and balance, you know, the culture with, you know, the rules of consent and sexual abuse. And this is where I actually don't find this very complicated to balance out, because if somebody is coming from a culture from this culture and completely understands the meaning of Taraxinia, and to them this is, you know, this is all it is only a mating ritual, and they come and meet this other person who maybe doesn't know, or maybe doesn't care, or maybe whatever, and they are dancing together, and one of them all of a sudden becomes uncomfortable. all that this should result in is a misunderstanding on the dance floor, where somebody's thinking that it's a mating ritual and taking it to some level, and the other person being uncomfortable and saying, oh, sorry, that's not what I meant. And if we respect consent, in theory, this is where it stops. Because there was a misunderstanding, there are cultural differences, and this is where it stops. If it doesn't stop there, if you continue imposing the fact that this is cultural, even if the other person hasn't understood it, this is no longer okay. And this is no longer about respecting cultural differences. This is about forcing something very specific on another person.
Yeah, thank you for that.
And I think this is the balance.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we want to, I want to personally thank all of you. We as Less is More, the Less is More group, would like to thank all of you for participating. Before we move on, we want to go ahead and put up our question again for the contest. So we had a winner from last week that won a really nice handmade mug. And this week, our question is, where is the music/dance genre coladera from? So put up your answer because your answer has to be recorded during our live session in order for you to be entered into the drawing to win next time. And the prize for next time is a really nice t-shirt that is unisex. It says, I am my sister's keeper, and it is sponsored by Nice Flamingo, Carlito Seda here in the United States. So go ahead and visit their website, their Instagram or Facebook here today. And yep, I see some answers coming in. Good. And thank you for all of the comments. I've gotten a few in my personal inbox saying thank you for the live sessions. These are really great topics. I'm sure all of us are getting that. Thank you for sharing it to all of our audience. And again, thank you to our panelists. So we're going to go ahead and finish out this session. We do want to make sure that everybody knows that the next edition of Less is More, which was rescheduled, unfortunately, from this year because of COVID to next year, we are open for booking. So please go ahead and go to our website, Less is More. Do we have our banner up, Paula, that we can put up? You can look for the event on Facebook and also look it up online. But the Less is More event is going to be, for those in the United States, it's Memorial Day weekend. So you have an extra day off if you want to join us in Lisbon. We're really excited to go. We're going to have a few more genres this year. We're going to have Kizomba fusion. We're going to have Semba. We're going to have Kuduro. We're going to have Bachata. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited for this. So please go ahead and look up the event. Go to our website and go ahead and request information, or go ahead and buy a pass. There's also sales that are going to be coming up. So, excuse me, if you have any questions, reach out to any of us. And thanks for joining. And that's through our normal heart. Thanks, everybody. And join us on September 20th for the next edition, which is a spotlight on female DJs in the scene. So Saturday, September 20th. Thank you and have a great weekend. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.